It's such an honor to be among those of you who are so influential. Teaching comprehension and reading and literacy makes such an impact on students' lives. It is my hope that this talk will encourage people to think creatively instead of just using standard textbooks or worksheets to think about alternative nonfiction texts. Selecting text is an art. It's really important to choose one that has the right features and that is at the right level for the students that you're working with. Those kind of factors are important, but there are other factors to also consider. For example, research shows that if a student has background knowledge in the subject of the text, or if a student can make connections with what they're learning to what is in the text that they're reading, or if the text is intriguing to them, the subject, or how the text is laid out, that builds motivation. And motivation can support engagement, rigor, and thinking. So as a reading professor, I often work with classroom teachers, and if they have a snarly problem teaching reading, they come to me, and we think of creative solutions. So recently I worked with a teacher who teaches second and third grade split class. So she has 2 grades, a wide range of reading abilities, and students from very diverse populations. And she said, I'd like to teach 3 skills, but my problem is I teach these skills and I don't apply it to the reading. So I thought, well, let's think of some alternative texts that we can use. And if we think of texts that are intriguing and interesting to students, they're going to be much more likely to actually apply the comprehension skills that we're teaching. So the 3 skills we picked out were compare and contrast key details, generating questions, and close reading. In each of these cases, I taught a lesson where we modeled it specifically, we practiced, and there's some independent practice. So I thought to myself, what kind of intriguing text could I use? Student-made materials, research. Well, they were currently studying the history of their city, Grand Rapids. So I went to the Grand Rapids Public Museum, and I thought, I'll pick up some things there. And there were some interesting things there, but it was above their reading level. So I took some ideas from that, and then I made my own materials that matched their reading level and what they were learning about. So the first project was I interviewed their school principal, a day in the life of him, and I also interviewed him about his grandfather who had the same name, lived in the same town 70 years earlier, and wrote these 2 journal entries. And the tasks of the student was to read for key details and underline the needs and wants of each person, and then compare and contrast them. What was really exciting, because the students knew their principal, Mr. Boyd, and loved him so much, they were studying about needs and wants in social studies. They were so intrigued, and not only did they pay such close attention to the reading skill right away. The artifact that they did was they made a graphic organizer comparing the 2 needs and wants, and then they had a discussion generating ideas about what really caused the differences between the needs and wants of this 70-year gap between the 2 Mr. Boys. The second project that we did is I created 2 posters of the founding fathers of Grand Rapids. One was Lucius Lyons, and the other was Luis Kemphoff. Now, at the time of the founding of Grand Rapids, they were fighting each other for who's going to be in charge. So what I did is I made a poster about each, and I divided the class in 2 and paired them up. So 6 pairs read about Lucius Lyons, 6 pairs read about Luis Kemphoff, and their job was to take notes on sticky notes and then to generate questions. I was absolutely amazed. They were so floored and intrigued. I think it was because they were warring between who was going to be the founding father, and it was their city, so they did just beautiful work. They were so engaged. And what they did is they created this graphic, and on one side they had sticky notes of notes, and the other the questions, and then one pair from each founding father got together and they compared their work and they talked about the questions, and the work was so deep and the thought was just fantastic. And the third project was I went to the public museum and I took snapshots of 3 historical buildings that were on the same street as their school. And then I made these architectural mysteries. So the goal was to teach them close reading. And the students were so thrilled to solve the mysteries, especially because these buildings were right next door to their building, that they read, predicted, cross-checked, reread, kept going into the text, And they did all the application of the skill on their own. It was really fantastic. So they were really, really, really engaged, and they did all kinds of discussion, and it was really fantastic. Their final job then was to figure out which sheet matched which building, and then they had to find it on the map. So in conclusion, what I would like to say to you, and encourage you to say, there are so many possibilities of informational text that you can use. But if you find texts that are uniquely intriguing to kids and motivating, they're much more likely to put the energy, the time, the motivation, and to do the deep thinking. So think about possibilities that you can think of around your own, so ones that you can find, but also the ones that you can possibly create.